What's up, folks? Welcome to Macabre. We got a very special episode tonight. I can't wait to hear it myself. I'm joined by my co-host, Alicia Silverstone from Clueless, Carl.
What?
Clueless? You ever seen that movie?
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd. All right. Thank you for that introduction, Jilly Little Jacob. I don't know.
Okay.
And here at Macabre, we have a birthday coming up. So it's actually Jacob's birthday tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was my birthday like a week ago. So
Yep.
we are Leos.
Yes, indeed.
2 Leos in one family.
Fiery lions.
How did our parents do it?
Yeah. Oh, I see you checking out our shirts, you Maccabees.
Yeah.
That's right. Merch.
Macabre. And it's got the whole logo on the back. Can they even see it? Yeah, you can see it. I got
Sweet
Jake
merch.
these for his birthday.
Yeah. Join our Patreon, you might be able to get a little something like this.
Yeah, if you join our Patreon every month, one of our, I think it's God tier members, gets put into a raffle for free merch.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, enough dilly-dallying. I'm bringing you the story this week, and I am bringing you the story of Charles Schmid, a.k.a. Smitty. He is the Pied Piper of Phoenix.
Interesting.
Or also known as the Pied Piper of Tucson, Arizona.
Hey, that's where we were born.
Yes, which brings us to episode 2 of my series I'm personally doing on my weeks, called My Besties and True Crime Around the World, where I tell you a story on each time it's my week about some place in the world where one of my friends or somebody in my family lives, and I tell you a true crime story about them. So this week, Tucson, Arizona. We started last week, for my week, in Nevada, where my friend Alyssa lives, and we did the Harvey bombing. This week, we're going to do the Pied Piper of Tucson, which is where Jacob and Austin and I were born.
Yep.
Austin is our little sister.
Yeah. Funny.
No. No, we were actually all born on the Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona during Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm.
Our mom was a fighter pilot and our dad was a jet engine mechanic.
Our mom was an electrician. An aviation electrician, not a fighter pilot.
She was a pilot.
But she was a pilot on her own time.
And she fought the pilots.
Yeah.
Fist fought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So.
Because our mom's a real violent person.
Mm-hmm.
I winked. For those of you listening.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. A beautiful desert town stretched out across the sand, home to harsh conditions and inexplainable beauties, laid a town called Tucson. Now a booming community with 500,000 inhabitants, but in the 1960s, it was more of a quaint, small desert town. Scorpions, heat stroke, dehydration, rattlesnakes. These are all some of the terrible endings one can have living in this environment. But for the 3 young women in this week's story, their deadly end would come from an insecure and unstable little man who dressed up like Elvis with wigs and creepy makeup, imitating teenagers and searching for attention.
Ugh. Wait, he imitated teenagers?
Yeah.
And
As an
dressed
adult.
up like Elvis?
As an adult, yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do both of those things?
He acted like he was one of the youngins, like one of the cool, like, I'm one of you guys. That's why they call him the Pied Piper, because he, like, only hung out with young women, even as an adult.
Gotcha.
July 8th, 1942. A sweet little baby boy was born to an unwed couple in Tucson, Arizona. One day later, he was adopted by a very wealthy couple, Charles and Catherine Schmid. The boy would be named Charles Howard Schmid Jr. His parents were well off and owned the Hillcrest nursing home and would go on to give Charles everything he could ever want in life. He was a very bright young man who was very well mannered and liked by many. By the age of 8, Charles would go hunting with friends for small game animals and was allegedly very reckless and began quite a wild behavior during this time. He was said to have a difficult relationship with his father, Charles Sr., who was accused of beating Charles, but the allegations were never proven. Like, Charles just said that as an adult. Like, yeah, well, my dad beat me.
I see. Which could be true or...
Yeah, the mom says that's not true. But
Okay.
we know that sometimes
Yeah.
that it can happen and a parent says it doesn't.
Who knows? I've
Charles-
never met somebody with the last name Schmid. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, Schmid. Schmid.
No T.
No T.
Okay. If you say so.
But then he goes by Smitty.
Yeah.
2 T's.
Schmidty.
So, Charles, although very quick-witted, lacked the interest to apply himself at school, resulting in poor grades and lots of truancy. Where he didn't apply himself academically, he applied himself in sports. He was very good at gymnastics. Go USA.
Yeah.
The Olympics right now. He trained really hard and often and even led his high school team to state championships. I am like tongue-tied tonight.
I don't know what's wrong with you.
I don't know what's wrong either. It's because my cat sat in my coffee right before this recording.
Yeah.
She just plopped her stomach right down on my fresh coffee.
And that cat's always coated in road dust, so...
She's a freaking rat.
Dirt cat.
So I had to make a whole new coffee. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that would throw me
But
off,
I
too.
digress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. He trained really hard, and he often led his high school to state championships. But his senior year, he decided to quit the team. This was the same time that Charles found out that he was adopted and went to search for his bio parents. Upon finding his biological mother, she basically told him, I didn't want you then, and I don't want you now. Like, leave me alone. Which, can be really... That kind of rejection can be very mind-altering to a person.
Yeah. I could see that being just a freaking horrible thing to hear.
Mm-hmm. So he ended up acting out, just like you would assume anyone would. And just before his high school graduation, he was caught stealing from the machines shop on campus and was suspended, and he never returned to school. Now, remember I said that his parents owned the nursing home and they were pretty wealthy?
Mm-hmm.
He was an only child, and so he was very spoiled.
Gotcha.
His parents doted on him and gave him anything he ever asked for. When he was in his early teens, he started living in his own small home on their land, like on their property.
That sounds awesome.
Free of parental control and supervision, and with an allowance of $300 a month, which in this time period equates to $2,800 in money, like in our time. So it's a pretty good amount of money for a teenager to have a month for
That'd
no
be
reason.
Pretty good money for me to have as an adult.
And all his utilities were paid.
Mm-hmm.
All of his food was taken care of, and he had no bills. And they gave him the $300 a month, and they bought him a new car and a new motorcycle.
So he's an affluent young man.
Yeah.
Sounds like he probably just always got whatever he wanted.
Yeah. And
except for his biological mom.
Well, and as you can imagine,
Money can't buy that, I guess.
money can't buy acceptance.
I was thinking, what if when he went to visit her, was she like, if only you'd been more like Elvis, my favorite musician, then I'd maybe want you. But I'm just trying to think of the tie here, But she didn't want him.
Everyone loves Elvis.
Yeah.
And he wanted love.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. but we'll get into that. Well, he did, yeah. So, think of a kid in the 50s getting all of this stuff, like no supervision and stuff. He became quite the partier.
Yeah.
Charles was very self-conscious. While he wasn't really an unappealing man, he was very short. So he would stuff newspapers in his boots to try to appear taller, which is just like, I can't wrap my head around that.
I wonder how well that would work.
And just, what if your feet get sweaty and then you shrink a half inch because the damp newspaper?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
Tucson. It's hot down there.
He would put like oil paint on like his nose to contour it, and he would like stick his bottom lip out and put stuff in his bottom lip to stretch it so that he would have like the pout, so he would look more like Elvis.
Oh wow.
Yeah, wait till you see pictures of this dude.
Okay.
It's hilarious. I feel bad. No, I don't. This guy's awful. He would stuff the newspapers in his shoes to make himself feel taller. But he was really charming, and he was really charismatic, and he didn't really have a hard time getting the ladies because he did kind of resemble Elvis. So he had like the whole setup to be the coolest dude in the town.
Yeah.
He had his own place. All the friends could party. He had money. Bills were paid. His parents never got in trouble. He could do no wrong by his mother. We all know that type.
Yeah. You talking about Austin?
We're talking about you and Austin.
Oh. I was say I did wrong by her.
My brothers are both simultaneously my mom's favorite.
Well, that's because she knew you.
Because I grew up with her.
Yeah.
Okay. So he had it all. Looks, money, his own place, cars. The girls just swooned over him, and all the guys wanted to be him and flocked around him like a bunch of fans, emulating his persona in envy. As the ringleader of these teens, since he is now over 18 at this point, he would often get into heavy drinking, drug use, and he would have sex clubs at his house.
Whoa.
Which is crazy. He wore makeup and did body modifications so that he would look more and more like Elvis to be admired. Charles was known to also have a hot temper and a mean side, and he was quite the womanizer, so he was often dating multiple women at a time, putting them under his little spell of like the hot rich guy. Like they all wanted to be with him. They'd even he had multiple women bleaching their hair to please him to look like his idea of the perfect woman.
Wow.
Watch out, Charles. It would have been me. Because I have blonde hair. Anyway.
So you like some blonde?
He likes some blonde. Because that was his image of the perfect woman. As you can imagine, in the mid to late 50s, early 60s, this kind of behavior would cause a lot of attention with the local small town police. He was probably on he was on their radar a lot.
Yeah, they were probably always pulling him over as they were like driving around, hitting mailboxes.
Yeah.
Causing kinds of
in his
50s hijinks.
Not a Letterman's jacket, but like his gymnast Letterman's jacket from high school that he's still sporting as like a grown man.
Yeah.
That's rough.
With a switchblade.
He's like, you want to mess with me?
Yeah, I could shave with this.
You greaser. Oh, wait. He would have been a Soch.
Yeah. He
Outsiders.
sounds like a Soch to me.
It's an Outsiders reference. That's the best. By 1963, Charles had turned 21, and he started dating a young woman named Mary French.
Excuse me.
Mary was kind of a loner who didn't have many friends, and she worshipped the ground Charles walked on, which is a common theme for this because apparently he could really get his grips in on these young women. Obviously, they're impressionable, and he's like the head honcho. She would do anything for him without question. Charles had told his parents that he and Mary were married which they weren't. So they allowed her to move into his little, like, penthouse thing.
What, like the parents wouldn't have been invited?
They
to
said
the
they
wedding?
ran off and secretly got married at the courthouse. And, you know, social norms in this time, like, you couldn't live with a man if you weren't married.
Yeah.
So they said they were married. And she was a high school dropout who had a lot of past delinquency, and she was considered an outsider. Mary and Charles had a really tumultuous...
An outsider? Socius in the Greases?
Call me Cherry.
Yeah.
No, Cherry was a soc. But, yeah, so Mary was... she was a high school dropout. She was a delinquent. Her and Charles had a really, really tumultuous relationship. But she ended up being able to move in with him. And his parents hired Mary at their nursing home, and they would just give Charles her whole paycheck.
Wow.
Yeah, so she didn't see a dime of it. Charles is really manipulative with money. So,
That's pretty horrible.
yeah. And she would just stay, and he used her loyalty and her infatuation against her. On May 30th of 1964, Charles told Mary he wanted to kill someone just to see if he could get away with it. Because he's never basically been told no in his life, or really had any consequences for any actions.
Well, and I mean, let's be real, folks. We've all had the thought. This, you know, hello to the jury, as this is Exhibit A of when I'm being prosecuted for a murder.
I actually just made my first exhibit today for a trial because I work in a law office. I felt really cool doing that because I'm a paralegal, and so that was fun.
Tight.
I was like, put the stamp on it, Exhibit A.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I don't work in criminal law though.
That's less awesome.
So, Charles told Mary he wanted to kill someone just to see if he could get away with it. He had made a list of women that could be possible victims, and he wanted his dutiful Mary to help him determine which one would be the victim. Mary, Charles, and his best friend and follower, Jonathan Saunders, chose a name off the list. Aline Rowe. She was a very sweet high school student. She was 16 years old, so she was a sophomore. She had recently moved to the area after her parents' divorce, and she had dreams of being an oceanographer. Mary invited Aline out to hang out with her, Charles, and Jonathan. She waited till her mom left for work at 11 p.m., and she had her little hair curlers in and was still in her nightgown when Charles drove up and picked her up.
This is
Aline.
Aline.
Mary, Charles, and Jonathan picked up Aline.
Like saying, hey, we're going to go have a party.
Like,
or
come
something.
hang out with us out in the desert. Because it was really cool to go hang out in the desert and just, like, chill. Kind of like, we're from the Midwest. And in the Midwest, we go out to, like, cornfields and the woods. And that's where you would drink without your parents knowing and get drunk and stuff, like, and die in a cornfield. Well, they would go out to the desert and drink and stuff.
That's right.
So, and I unironically said you would go die in the cornfield, like die of alcohol, but Aline, unfortunately, would meet the same fate without alcohol.
Because they were trying.
Because it was an intentional. Okay.
Sounds like our boy was just trying to feel something for once.
Yeah.
You know?
Something to take the place of the hole in his heart that's missing his mother's love.
Yes.
Or something. All right. So Charles drove them out to the desert. Mary stayed in the car, and Charles and Jonathan and Aline took a walk. Charles struck her over the head with a rock and killed her. Mary joined in after Aline was dead. And helped dig the hole and bury the body. Aline's mother knew immediately when she got home from work that something had been terribly wrong, and she phoned the police. Now, remember, she worked overnight shifts, so she didn't find out anything until the morning. So she never approved of Mary and Aline being friends. She always thought Mary was kind of dirty and like not good company. Good mother's instincts, by the way.
Turns out, yeah.
So she insisted to the police that Charles and Mary had something to do with this. She was like, no, my daughter is like...
She's a good kid.
She's a good kid.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's probably what cops hear every time. Parents are like, no, they wouldn't run away. They're a great kid. Like, this is
but
crazy.
This just happened to be true.
So, she told the police, you need to interview them. You need to talk to them. That like, this is not okay. Something happened. And despite her protests, Charles and Mary were interviewed and released. And then the police deemed her a runaway, Aline.
Well, they probably had a story.
They were like, oh, your parents got divorced. Obviously, she ran away. Because there's no other possible reason why she couldn't be home. Except for she ran away because her parents got divorced.
Well, you're saying, like, they picked up Charles and Jeff? Or...
No, they didn't. So the mother, Aline's mother only knew of Mary and Charles.
Okay.
They didn't even bring up Jonathan, and he wasn't interviewed.
Jonathan. Okay. So, but they interviewed Charles and Mary? Well, they probably had all night to, like, have an airtight story.
Well, they've been planning this for weeks.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because he was like, I want to murder somebody on May 30th, and I think it was a little while later, but after this incident, Charles and Mary would have irreconcilable differences, and they ended up parting ways. And I think she moved to Ohio from Arizona. A few months later, he was involved with a 17-year-old named Gretchen Fritz. She was the eldest daughter of a prominent surgeon in the area, and she was a beautiful young blonde. Now, remember, Charles has a lot of money and a really comfortable life due to his parents, but he always wanted more. He would often prey on young teen girls, propose to them, like multiple girls at a time. He would propose, and then he would have their parents give them wedding gifts, and then he would break up with them after getting a wedding gift of money. I don't know why he wanted so much money. He had money. All his bills were paid.
Yeah.
It's mental illness.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because
there's a hole inside him. He's trying to fill it.
Yes, indeed. So he was running schemes like that. Proposing to young women, getting like a dowry type money from their parents, and then breaking it off. Or they would break it off whenever they found out that he had multiple fiancés. So then he meets Gretchen. And Gretchen was no different than most of these girls, but she was freaking crazy. She was used to being from a really rich family as well, and he had his eyes on her money, but she was extremely jealous and very toxic and very possessive, but then so was he right back at her. With both of them being very jealous and controlling. Obviously, rumors soon started that he started becoming physically abusive to her as well, to Gretchen. And
I was going to say, maybe they were like some kind of weird match made in heaven, where they're both like crazy, possessive, jealous, blah, blah, blah. But it appears not to be the case.
Well, hold your tongue, sir, because you don't know the story yet.
True.
All right, here we go. So he's in his mid-20s. She's 17. Charles was also just as infatuated with her. And I guess he got really drunk one night and he confessed to the murder of Aline. Told her everything. And he says that he killed a little boy years ago. And this is like never brought up again. We don't know who the little boy is.
If he says it, it's probably true. Wouldn't you think?
Yes.
Like, why would he say that?
Well, attention, I guess. So now she's got something on him.
Yeah.
So, by the time that he had confessed to these murders to her, though, she was so smitten with him and so in love that she just simply didn't care. She's like, I'm going to be with you. And as their relationship progressed, she would get more and more possessive of him.
Yeah.
And she eventually, like, you know, she would find out about these other women and it would cause them to fight more. But Charles obviously couldn't just break up with her because she had leverage over him.
Yeah.
And she was like, finally, cut it off with all these other women, or I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to go to my dad and I'm going to tell them about the murders because you were already a suspect and questioned for Aline.
Yeah.
So, and he was like, I got to kill this chick. And he's like, so, because he wouldn't accept this. He didn't want to be monogamous. He wanted to keep his thing going. He was the cool guy. Like all the young ladies, like he still at this time is continuously throwing parties. And he's like the kingpin of these like teens of Tucson.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's basically exactly like in the game of Survivor. When somebody finds out that you have a hidden immunity idol, you got to get them voted off.
You got to get them out.
They got a secret on you.
You gotta.
It's the exact
same thing.
Yeah.
So he was like, I'm not gonna be monogamous. This chick is nuts. So Charles wouldn't accept this because he didn't want to be monogamous. On August 16th, 1965, Gretchen took her younger sister Wendy to the drive-in movie theater, and they would never return home. They were reported missing, and Charles was interviewed. He said he thought they probably ran away to Mexico. Because why not, right?
Why not?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
On the 22nd of August, though, Gretchen's car was found a half a mile away from Charles's house. Second time that he's been connected to a missing girl, and now it's two missing girls from a prominent family.
Yeah. And that he's had, like, personal ties with, and he's always had run-ins with the law.
To my knowledge, he didn't really have any connections to Aline, except for that she was kind of friends with Mary in school.
But still.
But, yeah. This one was big that they had a connection.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when Charles would confide in a friend of his, Richard Brune, that he had murdered Gretchen and her sister at his house and dumped their bodies in the desert. The two of them went out to see the bodies, and they decided at that point to bury them.
The sister, too.
Yeah, the little sister and her. So it's
What,
three
did he
victims.
think that she might have known that he killed
No,
Aline?
she was just with her, I think. So it was a crime of opportunity, and the sister had to go because she was with Gretchen. Wendy is the sister. So the two of them, Richard, the friend he just randomly confessed to and took to the bodies, the two of them went to see the bodies, and then they buried them. After burying Gretchen and Wendy, Charles took Richard to the site of where him and Jonathan and Mary buried Aline. Weird choice, right?
What, just to show off?
Yeah. Later that August, Charles traveled to San Diego and was quickly arrested for impersonating an FBI agent and questioning girls on the beach. The police at this point, which is like, what?
Yeah.
What a weird thing to go do, man.
Mm-hmm.
The police at this point were suspicious of his involvement in Gretchen and her sister's disappearance, but due to the lack of evidence, he was released. The investigation would continue, and Charles would keep getting away with the murders. In the circle of teens in Tucson that partied at Charles's house and looked up to him, it was well known to all of them that Charles had committed these crimes, yet nobody would be caught snitching to the police.
Sure.
He had such a high level of influence and control on these teens that the thought of ratting him out didn't even cross their minds. They were like, Gretchen got what was coming to her.
She threatened to snitch.
Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, we won't be caught snitching. Snitches get stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably how they thought.
Or in this case, snitches get ditches. Right?
I was going to say something that rhymed with desert, but nothing came to mind immediately because I'm not Eminem. I'm not quick like that. So they all knew and they weren't going to say anything. Now, in this point, so that all happened in August. In September of the same year, Charles met a new girl, Diane Lynch, a 15-year-old sophomore, on a blind date. Who set up that blind date? 6 weeks later, in October, they were married.
Yeah.
He's like 23, 24 or something. He just married a 16-year-old. 15-year-old. During this time, in the background scenes, a very worried Richard Brune would start to get paranoid, knowing of Charles's crimes now, because, you know, Charles just randomly was like, these are the crimes I just committed.
And he
took him. And he helped him bury the bodies.
Yeah. So Richard, you're not...
He didn't ask for any of that.
Well, he didn't ask for any of that, but also, you know, he helped bury the bodies.
Right.
That makes
I don't know
bad.
Richard's age. He could have been like 17-year-old kid that was like heavily influenced or even really scared of Charles.
Could be.
Because if anyone shows you, look at all these people I murdered, you're like, ooh, that's kind of scary. Normal people don't do that.
It's true. But in the eyes of the law, he's still an accessory, you know?
Not everyone lives by the law.
Yeah. Like the
Law is
murderers.
the law.
And accessories after the fact.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yep, that's a good point. So he, knowing of Charles's crimes and the brutal murders he inflicted on those young women, he began to worry that the woman that he admired and cared about would be next on Charles's list. His girlfriend was. So his worrying was for naught.
Wow.
It was legit. So with that like racking worrying and guilt, Richard went to the police and confessed everything he knew of the crimes Charles committed just to keep his girlfriend safe. And he even took the police to the scenes of the murders and where the bodies were buried. They couldn't find Eileen's body yet, but the police had enough evidence that they needed with Gretchen and Wendy's murder, and by November, Charles was finally arrested for his crimes.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. He was very arrogant and uncooperative throughout the arrests. Days later, Mary and Jonathan were also arrested for their involvement on Eileen's murder. And they were both given plea deals in return for giving up everything to convict Charles. Mary pled guilty to accessory to murder, and she served 4 years in prison.
Whatever.
She just helped bury the body, but she's felicitated?
Yeah, she went and said, hey girl,
what's
come
the
on.
word I'm thinking of?
Knowing that Charles was going to, like, murder her. She was like,
she set it up and got
yeah.
Eileen out of the house. She should have got life.
I
that
agree.
little girl would have never died and never been lured out of her house if it wasn't for Mary. Because Mary, she trusted Mary and that was her friend.
And she knew what was going to happen to her.
Yeah, she should have gotten way more than that. She should have got second-degree murder. She's a skunk for that.
Stupid skunk.
Jonathan pled guilty to second-degree murder, and he got a life sentence. Charles's trial for Gretchen and Wendy began shortly thereafter, and Mary would testify against him in court, but Jonathan pleaded the fifth. And for our listeners around the world, pleading the fifth means that you're using your right to not speak.
Yeah, because if you speak, you might say something dumb and incriminate yourself. So
yeah, so when you say
have the
pleading
right
the fifth,
to be
you have the right
quiet,
to remain silent.
to just shut up.
Shut your mouth. I'm explaining that because I know my friend in the Netherlands one time was like, what the heck does that mean? I was like, I plead the fifth. And he's like, what? Why would you say that? I was like, I just realized that that's not something the whole world knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, he pled the fifth. He was like, I am not talking. Charles also refused to testify at his own trial, and after only 30 minutes of deliberation, the jury convicted him of both murders, and he was sentenced to death 10 days later.
Wow.
They sentenced him 10 days later.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
The way I said that, and the way I even read it, I was like, oh my God, he was gonna die 10 days after the judgment? That's crazy. Like, you never hear of that.
Yeah.
His now 16-year-old wife divorced him quickly.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would have pushed to have my name expunged.
I would.
It wasn't me.
I feel like you can annul that. Like, you don't even have divorce on your name at all. It depends. Erase it.
Oh my gosh, poor thing. Because she's a victim.
Mm-hmm.
He groomed her. But in that time period too, to be divorced,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
A social life sentence. Like, she'd have to move far away.
Yeah.
In May of 1967, the trial for Aline's murder began. After initially pleading not guilty, he pled guilty to second-degree murder. He then fired his entire legal team for being idiots, changed his pleading to not guilty, and requested a new trial.
Okay.
Bait and switch. He was like, psych.
Interesting strategy.
The request was denied. Because the judge doesn't have to accept that.
Yeah.
Just because he wants it doesn't mean he gets it.
Yeah.
3 years after her murder, Charles eventually, like 3 years of this stuff, he finally led the police to the gravesite of Aline's body so that her mother could have closure. Charles' mother, Kathleen, believed her son was innocent and ended up bankrupting herself to pay for his trials and attorney fees, only for him to actually have done them. The poor woman would end up living in complete poverty until her death in Coolidge, Arizona. You can love your child too much.
Yeah.
I'm not saying money matters more than your child, but to die in complete poverty, like bankrupting yourself over a trial when your kid murdered a bunch of people.
Yeah.
There's like a morality line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, should I help? I don't know. That's a debate for another day.
Indeed.
The Charles made many attempts to escape prison. And eventually in 1972 he actually did escape by I don't have this in here, but I'm pretty sure by stealing someone's wig and sneaking out. And that's a picture that I have that's so funny.
Okay.
And I'm so excited to show you guys.
That'll be on the Instagram, folks.
Yeah. Not long though.
Do you have the picture?
I do. Can
you show me real quick?
Yeah.
Then I can put the picture on this and say,
"Here you go, so funny." I'm not trying to like laugh about something you guys can't see. Oh, why isn't this opening?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So that's his wig, escape pic. This is his escape picture.
Well, no, I can put it on. With the computer, I can put it on.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
And then here's him. This is his costume makeup he wore. Yeah. Weird. Because
it's weird, huh?
He would often draw like a fake mole on his face and stuff. Like, but I mean, he wasn't that ugly. Like, he maybe shouldn't have been so weird. Anyway.
Yeah.
In May of the next year, Charles was stabbed over 20 times by two fellow prisoners. He died immediately. 10 days later. Immediately the next day.
Yeah. Jeez.
No, so he died 10 days later, and he died at the age of 32.
Yeah, that's my age. Until tomorrow. When I turn 33.
Swing.
Outlived you sucker.
Yeah.
You dang skunk. See? Yeah.
Pretty normal looking guy.
Probably a fairly nice looking gent.
Yeah. And
gives
that
me
was
like
an
Rod
issue.
Serling vibes.
yeah, you can picture him in that time period being like a real looker, and a lot of people really, of course, teenage girls were like totally into him, you know? So that's our story. So that's my second edition of my besties in true crime around the world.
Yeah.
So we did Tucson, Arizona. We did Nevada. Now Tucson, Arizona. And I'm just going to go around the globe east from Nevada.
And then my next episode will have nothing to do with all that.
It'll be whatever he wants to do.
It's going to be something I find.
Yeah.
Or get recommended to find.
Yeah.
If you guys ever have any cool stories that you would like us to research and write an episode about, let us know.
And you can now subscribe to our Spotify. So, you know, if you wanted to subscribe, follow our social media pages and interact with us on those things. We're always looking for recommendations on new episodes because people have the coolest stories of like, oh, there's this local thing that happened around here. And we're like, we want to hear that. That's super cool.
Yeah. And Patreon. Get sweet merch.
Yep. We will have merch linked on our Patreon soon. But for people who are already members, there's some people that are getting some free merch.
Yeah.
From July and August now.
Yes. So do not worry, it's coming.
Thank you guys for being listeners, and thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Pied Piper of Tucson.
Thanks, folks. See you next week.